Oh my goodness, we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another live stream episode of the Longkang Kitties. This is Java, your most handsome, non-political man ever on the face of the planet. And today we have a very, very special guest. Okay, so I'm gonna let Angie introduce the guest for today. And then right next to Angie is Jerry, and then of course we have Dan Wong. You'll see him later. Okay, don't care about him first. Dan Wong is the least important.
Turn the camera to me, please.
No, it's the least important component.
Nobody cares about you, Dan Wong.
We don't care about Dan Wong. Okay, Angie, please take it away.
So for this very special episode, we have Mr. Leon Perera from the Workers' Party. He was an NCMP in the 13th Parliament, and then he became a full-fledged MP in the last 2020 election when WP won Aljunied GRC, right? So Mr. Leon Perera, welcome to the Longkang.
Hey, thanks for having me on, everyone. It's really great to be here in the Longkang. I like your red and black colors in the studio here. Nice vibes, you know.
Very ominous.
Indeed.
So
I like it that John says he's non-political.
No, I'm the most handsome non-politician man ever on the face of the planet. So as to not take away, potential guests, their potential handsomeness. But I always introduce myself as such. In fact, we have one audience member who only listens to me to hear what am I the most handsome of that particular episode, then she switches off.
It's actually like what you say, we are living in a post-truth society where somebody can just claim that he's the most handsome without any backlash.
That's a good one.
But it has happened all this time and nobody has questioned me, nobody has challenged me, so I think it's fine.
It's your version of the truth.
I mean, if I'd known there'd be so many handsome people, I may not have agreed to come on. This doesn't make me look good, like this, I tell you.
Well, I think you're safe. Especially with like all of them around. They make you look better. Make you look better.
So thank you so much for consenting to come down to our podcast. We have a reputation for, like Angie said, being in the gutter, being in the Longkang. So thank you for coming down. Did you do a background check on us to see what manner of nonsense or shenanigans we are up to?
We did. Yeah, some of my colleagues did look at some of your past stuff, and it was interesting. Kind of pushing the boundaries. Always good to push the boundaries. Actually, I mean, you don't know where the boundary is.
I'm sure you would know about like pushing the boundaries.
That's like putting it mildly, pushing the boundary. I think we have totally obliterated the boundary, except for Jerry here. Jerry here is
the fence.
He's the reputation for perpetually sitting on the fence to the point where he's become the fence.
So Jerry is the fence. But okay, so right, before this episode, I was very studious and I did a lot of like background like research on you, and then I realized that there's actually not a lot of information about you and like your background and how you like came to become a WP MP. Like, would you like to tell us?
So you didn't have to do much research because there's not much.
I really tried, but not much for us to like go read. Could you tell us like a little bit about why you decided to join politics and again, why opposition?
Well, I guess you can trace that back to when I was a child. So I grew up in the Anson ward. At that time, there was this electoral district called Anson. And that was the district that elected JBJ in, I think, 1980, in late 1980 when they had the by-election. So I was a kid then. I won't reveal my exact age, of course. I was extremely young back then, barely having been born. But I registered the Anson by-election. It was quite a night. And I could hear shouts coming from the HDB flats all around when the result was announced. And that's something I'd never heard before. I'd never heard that kind of collective action, exuberance and feeling. It'd always been quiet as state. People keep to themselves generally. You know how it is, right?
Can I just budge in and say that the same happened when Sengkang, WP won Sengkang.
Oh, yes.
Like, I was in Tampines and then like I could hear all of the people in my block cheering. It was so electric. Yeah.
It was amazing. Yeah, I saw the video about the condo that erupted. And, I tell you, there was one of us at the WP HQ, and after the result had already been announced for half an hour, he hadn't internalized the result. No? So he didn't know that we had won Sengkang. And then when we told him, I won't say who this is, we told him 1 second, what? We won Sengkang! He totally went crazy.
Like half an hour after.
Yeah. He said, Are you kidding?
Yeah, I think like for us, I think there was a lot of fear, right? Like of like WP losing everything during that election. So when, instead you guys won like another GRC, everybody was like, oh my God. Thank you, Sengkang people. You guys made a great choice.
Indeed, very good choice. Thank you, Sengkang people. But yeah, coming back to that, so I guess from a very early age, I was acquainted with politics, and maybe that was one of the formative experiences, and maybe there were others too, I don't know, but I always had this concern for fairness, for balance in the political system. And I also think that at the end of the day, no one party or organization or individual or group of individuals should have too much power. You need some balance, you need some yin and yang, you need some healthy competition. I mean, if you look at business, you look at industry, if you have a company with 90% market share, I mean, is that a good thing? Is that a healthy thing? I think across the world, there will be a general consensus that's not a healthy thing. And that's why we have anti-competition law, antitrust law that has been developed for about 100 years or so. Well, in Singapore, hey, guess what? In Parliament, you have about 90% of the elected seats in the hands of one party. Is that healthy? I don't think so. So I think our system has to evolve to have a bit more balance. And I do acknowledge that is up to us, in the opposition to build that alternative that people think is worth supporting also. So I think it's not enough to say that it must be balanced. We also have to demonstrate that it's worthwhile to have more balance, because you have a group there that is doing worthwhile things, has worthwhile ideas, worthwhile people. So that whole positive narrative, I think it's incumbent on us to pull that off also.
Right.
So maybe from like, let's say, okay, let me give you a strange hypothetical. And usually hypothetical is the realm of them.
I thought you're non-political.
Oh yeah, but no, I'm very political, extremely political. In fact, so if let's say, for example, right now there's one particular GRC, there's like 1 million voted for PAP, 1 million voted for WP, and there's like one guy left, okay, and you're stuck in the elevator with him. Like what
elevator pitch.
Yeah, you have this elevator pitch, right? Okay, so maybe this is like a two-part question. Now, one would be, okay, what would be so-called this is just broadly speaking, right? WP's position in relation to PAP, and then maybe what would be your own personal position as well in relation to the party writ large.
But how much time do we have? I mean, is the elevator broken down, or is it like
okay, maybe we say like it's like a 12-story, right?
Wow, super fast.
Like a slow,
it's an old
elevator, but 12-story, right? Because that's okay, like 24. There are some estates with 24, like
right.
Levels,
let's say like 2 minutes or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very challenging, yes.
Okay, sharp intake of breath. Okay, what I would say is, first of all, it is healthier to have a more balanced politics. So I think that is something we should strive towards. And what we are trying to build in the Workers' Party is, credible alternative, where we have credible ideas. We have people who are sincere, who are conviction politicians, who want to contribute to the country. And I think that sincerity should be seen in the work that we do on the ground as well, the engagement on the ground, the activities on the ground to reach out, to help people to listen. So that's what we try and do. And in terms of what we stand for, we are generally to the center left, I would say, vis-a-vis what you see from the PAP. We have championed a number of policies that would make for a more livable country in a sustainable way, not going to an extreme. We championed a large hospital bill insurance scheme, universal insurance scheme, long before it was adopted. But the PAP, this is something I brought up in Parliament as well. MediShield Life, right, adopted in 2015. Well, that was the Workers' Party position for a very long time. Actually, even going back to the 90s, we championed such policies. So I think, our general stance, I know you're coming to the end of the zero story.
Yeah, it's like level 20.
Level 20.
Yeah.
You can hear the bell ringing, So basically, if you have a society where people feel that society has my back, that there is this communitarian sense, nobody's going to be thrown under the bus, everyone has opportunities, that will bring out the best in the Singaporean people. We will become more dynamic, more innovative, more creative, more entrepreneurial. You will see more of those things that as a country we need to thrive, in the 21st century. So, okay, elevator door open.
Yeah. maybe so there was a second part to it, which is maybe now you have extra 2 more minutes, and then now
the door stuck.
Yeah. Okay, now you're going down. Now we're going back to the ground floor.
Which town council was maintaining this elevator?
Not the WP one.
So now this fella wants to know like specifically about you and where you stand. Let's say you're gonna be the leader of the GRC, or the person that's like front and center. Specifically, what are your stance and your policy that I know it's like really, really, really broad, but so the way that I'm doing it is less like from broad, then after we kind of narrow down, right? So like really broad, your personal policy, your personal stance on maybe even in relation to either the PAP or even in relation to, let's say, the other WP members, like how are you different from the others, just purely from yourself?
How am I different from the others?
Oh, you mean like the other WP?
Or even the other PAP, like politicians.
politicians.
Some of them are more handsome than me. I mean, that's just straight off the bat. Unfortunately,
I disagree.
I'm in a crowded field, so that's probably one difference. No, I would say what I stand for personally is going back a little bit to what I said before the elevator got stuck. We have to have a confident society, just summed up in one phrase, a confident society. That was actually the theme of the very first speech I made in Parliament in I think January 2016. We should have a Singapore where everyone feels confident that they are valued. They have the full rights of citizenship. They can speak out. Those views will be listened to. They can make a difference. There is a fair bit of survey evidence out there to suggest that many Singaporeans don't feel that they can make a difference here. And I cited some of that evidence in Parliament recently, that there is a lack of vertical accountability. There's vertical accountability deficit. So we want to create a society, I think, that is very much one where everyone feels that they have that role and they have that place. And I think under those conditions, you will get a lot more better outcomes in terms of social mobility. We will unlock the creativity of more people, rather than a lot of people feeling that they cannot keep up with this hyper competition. We cannot keep up with the pressure of ever rising cost of living, and people become demoralized, and people do not really fulfill their potential to the max, So I think that's really the mission statement, if you want. I mean, to me, that would be the overarching statement of philosophy. And then you unpack that in a lot of many policies that can come out of that. I think we've advanced some policies. Some of them the PAP government have adopted. And I think we had a debate about this recently.
You were so cross at them for saying that.
I prepared for this.
Okay, you say.
Okay, let me do this. So right, like in one of the interviews I think you gave, you described yourself as bookish, dull, and introverted, right? But like your reaction to DPM Wong recently went super viral on the internet, right? And then I did a bit of digging, and I went to our favorite local forum, Hardware Zone, to see what the netizens were saying about it. So I'm gonna ask the Longkang Kitties to read out some of the comments. Okay, one for each of us. Pretend you're a Hardware Zone person. The top one.
Pretend you're Pui forever alone.
Yeah.
Very well spoken. A bit of fire, not too aggressive. Fire maintained very well. Medium well done.
Medium well. And this is another one.
This expression killer. Can someone make into a GIF?
And then Dan Wong. Pick one.
His face can tell he quite dulan.
And then my favorite one, Leon Perera is one of the few oppies I have time for. So
it's great praise coming from the assessment.
Yeah, it's really it's like when you get something like that from like Hardware Zone people, it's really like top praise. So were you dulan? How dulan were you on a scale of 1 to 10?
How much were you reading?
On the Tulaner scale, from a scale of 1 to 10. I don't know, maybe 7.5, I guess.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, that's quite high.
We don't want to see you at 10. Oh my goodness. What are you going to do at 10? No?
Okay, but my question was, right, like what triggered you during that debate? Because I don't think like there were any like remarks that were any worse than previously said to the WP or to the opposition in general. So like why did that particular episode trigger you?
Well, it really goes back to the need to have honest debates. I mean, what you were saying about the post-truth society, I think, you can disagree about things. Disagreement is healthy, and the truth and the best path forward emerges from disagreement and debate. If you have no disagreement and debate, it's a very dangerous situation. If everyone goes, yes sir, two bags full, right? So I think it's healthy to debate, but I think there should be an agreed set of facts, and debate should be based on things that are truthful and fair. So when all those statements came from the DPM in one particular paragraph that, you don't really have ideas that are really meaningful, they're just populist, they're not serious ideas, and you don't explain the trade-off, so this is disingenuous or dishonest in some way. So I thought, to me, it's very important to just assert that these things are incorrect. We have put forward serious ideas, well-researched, well thought through, so much so that the PAP government itself have adopted some of these ideas and turned those into policy, and we gave many examples of that. We're not saying that it's just because we advanced those ideas that they were taken up as policy. There were probably other voices in society that put forward those ideas, sometimes maybe before we did. But the fact is, we championed that as a party position before it was adopted as the PAP government's party position, So you can't say that we have not serious ideas. And we do explain the trade-off. So in the recent debates on GST, on HDB housing, we talked about the trade-off. So the effect on the rate of growth of reserves, for example, we talked about that openly in a fairly detailed, very rigorous manner. And there was no dishonesty at all, So I think if that should not be the case. I think debate should be held based on acknowledging that there are certain facts out there, and based on those facts, you can have a different position. So the position of PAP is that you do need a GST increase. Whereas for us, we maintain that there's some other alternative. So that's fine. You can agree to disagree on that. Ultimately, the people should be well informed, understand the different positions, and then they make up their minds, they judge. That's okay to have a debate, but to sort of come out with a statement that is not really accurate,
Can I ask a stupid question? Because
there are no stupid questions.
Oh, okay. That's great.
I'll take that as a challenge.
Wow. Please go.
So when we talk about the reserves, right?
I'm gonna regret that. Yeah, we go.
So when we talk about the reserves, right? We don't know how much there is in the reserves, correct? But there's an estimate which is about 2.2 trillion or something like that.
Actually, the reserve, the estimate I've seen, it's just wow lah. Yeah, it's I've heard from between 400 billion to 4 trillion.
We don't know exactly how much is there, but is there a number that we can reach and be happy with? Because I think in one of the proposals that WP proposed, right, it's instead of the NIRC being 50-50, you would propose a 60-40 kind of thing. And then of course everybody's like, oh my god, you're rating the reserves. But I mean, I'm an artist, so I don't know numbers very well. But it doesn't quite make sense to me, because a slower growth doesn't mean a negative growth, right?
Exactly. That's the whole point we're saying. We are not advocating drawing down on the reserves principle. But I mean, the earlier point that you made, of course, there are various numbers floating around. The assets that are held by the MAS and by Temasek, I think there are figures out there that they do publish. For MAS as a central bank, I think they have to do that. For GIC, I believe the figure is not published, but there are estimates that are floating around the financial community. So if you put all those numbers together, you get various estimates, generally well over 1 trillion. And I think this figure has been brought up in Parliament, so I'm not saying anything new when I say that. And then when you look at the amount that was drawn down during COVID, so COVID was referred to by many figures in the PAP as the crisis of a generation. That means one whole generation. This is the worst crisis. So from a reserves figure, I mean, you can whip out your calculator, and maybe every one of us needs to do that. I also probably need to do that. So you have a total reserves well over 1 trillion, well over, right? And then the amount that was drawn down was about 50 billion. for the worst crisis of a generation. So, I mean, that's just to put certain things in context, you know.
Yesterday, I Googled how many zeros there are in a trillion, and there are 12.
12 zeros.
Trillion is 1,000 billion.
1,000 billion, right?
Yeah, I
And
know.
then we spent 50 billion.
50 of that 1,000.
50 billion in a crisis generation. I mean, that's not to be complacent. I mean, of course, there could be an even worse crisis that would require a worse drawdown, a war, or something like that. But I think the point with us is that the point that we have been making is that we are calling for a slowdown of the growth rate. Exactly what Angie said. You have very good understanding of this,
really?
by the way.
So I'm not a dum-dum.
No. I mean, it's
Better than some of the people in Parliament. Yeah.
No, I really mean that. I genuinely mean that, because it's very easy, and a lot of people make this mistake of fudging what we are saying, to say there is a rate on the reserves, there's a draw on the reserves, we're taking away from future generations. But actually, we are saying that from a slope like this, you can make the slope of growth like this. You make the slope more gentle, but it's still growing. The reserves are still growing. And as the reserve size increase relative to GDP, you can and you should slow the rate of growth so that you free up more funds for the budget to invest in things that are necessary to invest in. You know, as our society is aging, geopolitics in the world becomes more contested and dangerous. You know, we need to invest. Climate change. You know, coastal defenses. All these things. You need to invest more in that present, because having a better present generation will also help future generations. For one obvious thing is total fertility rate, right? Just having children. If the present generation feels so pressured that they don't want to have children, there are not going to be many people in the future generation, you know.
Yeah.
And I think we can all recognize that just bringing in people to become citizens can be part of that solution, but it cannot be the whole solution. It is a good thing to try to encourage Singaporeans to have more children. And I spoke recently about this thing called the fertility gap. It's a very interesting concept. You know? So it is the gap between the number of children that the average woman has and the number of children that the average woman would want to have if she didn't have any of the current constraints and problems facing her. And you can measure this figure. There's a significant gap. So I basically put it to the government. I mean, have you studied this fertility gap? Have you tried to do a root cause analysis and try and, you know, address those issues, why people are not having more children, you know? And one of the things that we cited in Parliament as well, there is some academic evidence of statistical causal link between high housing prices and lower fertility. And you see this actually in a few places in the world, and Singapore is one of those places. There's an academic paper on that.
I think
long answers.
That's cool. I think we just had our lowest TFR in 2022, and we are at 1.05 right now. And then I was wondering as well, because right now I'm about 35 years old, and a few of my friends are trying to get pregnant but facing a lot of fertility issues. And the thing about the IVF journey is that, like, you know, you don't usually get it on the first try. You have to go for multiple tries, and the government kind of like subsidizes it to a certain extent. But some of my friends still go over to JB because it's like way cheaper. But to do that, like, sometimes it's very disruptive because they have to take leave from work to go over to the causeway and stuff like that. So I was wondering if like more could be done for the women who do want to have kids, because you don't have to convince them, you know, like they already want them, and it's more like how do they get them? Like, I mean, not like kidnapping or like adoption, abduction, but like, you know, because I was doing a bit of research on this, and apparently Israel has like a free IVF like system of support for all the women up till the age of 45. And like when I read about it, they say like, you know, up to two take-home children. So like if you have like a miscarriage, they don't count it as like a failed one, right? Because miscarriages tend to be higher as well for women who are older. And then so and Israel has a 2.9 like TFR per woman, which is highest in the industrial world. And they also don't discriminate whether you're married or single. So right now in Singapore, like IVF, if you're a single woman, you can't go for that. Even if you have all your economic resources in place and stuff, you can't like go for IVF fertilization, I think.
I didn't know this. This is terrifying.
That's some great research there. That really is. I agree that more can be done to look at the whole IVF regime, the costs, the time, the difficulty to try to encourage more people to make use of the option if they have to, and if they want to, so to try to reduce some of the barriers to people taking that up. That was one of the points in our manifesto as well, to look at the whole regime, to create a national fertility clinic where you really reduce some of these costs and other barriers for couples to have children. And the other thing that we have spoken about as well, repeatedly, actually, quite a number of my colleagues, is to equalize the whole ecosystem of policy benefits, financial incentives and so on, between single parents and kind of parents who are a nuclear family,
Just to be like a bit of a devil's advocate throughout all this, regarding the IVF thing, there's like a couple of issues with, let's say, we're gonna just make it free for everybody, or we're gonna make it free for like some group of people up to a certain age. IVF is a notoriously unreliable medical procedure.
The rates are very low, actually.
Yeah, it's
20
actually,
to 40%.
yeah, it's and there is a danger in having people think, like, most people don't do the research into this until they need it, and then there is a danger in, okay, like, the government say also it's okay, so then I can just like postpone it. There's that level of mindset lah. So what is the, is there like, I'm just wondering, is it really such a good idea for us to be pushing more on the medical end, as opposed to, let's say, the more holistic, like just do it in your small bedroom.
You only need a tiny space.
You only need a tiny space anyway.
You don't need a whole entire estate, like super huge with forests for you to forage about.
You don't need a massive, home space. Is it?
In reference to that particular quote, right? She was only talking about having sex in a small space, not raising kids in a small space.
Wow.
You can. I mean,
Yes.
But if you have a big space,
to be fair.
But if you have a big space, you got more places where you can have sex, and then which increases your chance of fertilization.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Yes, but raising kids in a small space is a bit troublesome.
That's true. Yeah. And I was thinking as well, because I was looking at other statistics.
Mr.
Sorry.
Perera, do you want to respond to that first?
That's a great point. I think that point has been raised, and so that's kind of the counter argument. I think the way to address that is education, So I think some of this stuff should be pushed out in the schools, and from the schools onwards, there should be educational campaigns to make people aware of the risks associated with different kind of behaviors and different kind of choices that you make, not just in terms of fertility, but across the board, in terms of the diet, physical activity, all these things. Singapore faces a huge problem with chronic health conditions, right? And we're going to pay a huge price going forward unless we arrest this. So, I would say that comes down to kind of education and health education. But I think the option for IVF should still be there, because there will always be people who, for one reason or another, may feel that they have to or want to postpone that decision to a little bit later in life. And I think given our low fertility rates, it behooves us to really give these people a chance to bring children into the society. So I think you can kind of do both. But I think it's a fair point. It really goes back to education.
So, I was looking at other stats, because you were talking about the economic pessimism making people not want to have kids, right? But I was wondering also as well whether there is some sort of cultural factors at play, because right now in South Korea, right, I think Jeju is right now trying to push a ban on child-free spaces, saying that it's not conducive for families, and it makes parents stressed about doing that. And South Korea has one of the lowest, I think the lowest TFR in the world right now.
0.7 now or something like
that.
Was it the newest?
I think
0.8.
I think the newest is 0.7.
The last I checked, it was 0.84 per woman. But anyways, I think the thing is, do we make it very difficult to have kids as well? Because, for example, Singaporeans, right, according to one survey, we are the most overworked country in APAC. We an average of 45 hours a week, and imagine having kids on top of that. How are you going to take care of them? And then if both parents are working, then it creates a lot of stress, trying to take care of the kids and also have to work. And some with the sandwich generation, sometimes you have to take care of your parents as well, who are in their 70s, 80s, developing health conditions. So like, should there be more like research into encouraging like a child-friendly environment? Like not just, you know, the spaces that we have, but the attitudes we have towards kids. Like, oh, even if a child is screaming in a restaurant, you want to smack their face, you're like, that's okay. You know, it's a child. They are blessing to the nation.
Do you think it's okay, Angie? Do you think it's okay?
I actually do like kids, you know. I do a lot of workshops for kids.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
So I don't usually get angry with the kids. I get angry with the parents because they don't discipline their kids most times if the kid is misbehaving.
Yeah. I think that there's a lot more that can be done. I mean, also just societal attitudes. So sometimes when you're on a plane, right, and there are kids who are screaming and crying. I mean, there was a time in my life when I would be very annoyed, but I mean, now that I really think it through, I don't anymore. I mean, I just accept it. And in fact, I would defend a couple who have kids that are screaming, and if someone were to be rude to them, I would try to just say something in their defense, because I think we all have to do our part, you know. I mean, if you want to be a society that has children, that has a higher TFR, you all got to do your part and accept the kids are going to be there in the public space, and everyone has to be welcoming of that, you know. But I think the deeper reasons really have to be studied. I think, you know, Angie, what you were saying about the need to study what's the reason. There's a lot of competition, right? There are a lot of costs associated with having children. This tuition industry is, I don't know, $1 billion, $1.5 billion. There's a lot of academic stress, and people are working very long hours. There is data to talk about hours worked. There's data to talk about hours slept, you know, and there's some data to suggest that Singaporeans are also more underslept than many other countries.
Yeah, man.
Oh, yeah,
totally. I'm so tired. I want to sleep.
Yeah,
not
after
right
this,
now.
I may take a nap. After having some of your, you know, I see you have a bar there, so after the thing's over, you know,
we can enjoy that, and then, like, you know, afterwards go.
But I think, you know, we should look at this fertility gap and really understand the reasons. And I think some of these reasons have to do with the intensity of competition, the economic pressures that people face. You know, Angie, you talked about economic pessimism. So I cited some data in Parliament recently, whereby, you know, a huge percentage of people feel pessimistic that their children can have a better standard of living than them. And I've talked to many people who say that's the reason they don't want to have children, which is very sad. I try and talk them out of it. But some people say, yeah, you know, if I'm going to bring children to the world and they're going to have to struggle and they have worse standard of living than me, then I don't want to do that, right? So I think we have to break this mindset, you know, we have to reinstill that confidence. And that means doing things on many, many different fronts. For example, looking at our childcare leave, looking at our elder care leave, looking at flexible work options, and, you know, what more we can do to make sure that everyone who needs that can have that. You know, these are some of the issues that we also brought out, you know, in Parliament, in our manifesto. So it takes quite a holistic effort, but I think it goes back to really studying that fertility gap, really understanding the reasons and addressing the root causes, which includes more nap time.
Yes, for nap time, maybe like with your partner or something, I don't know. Then you won't be taking a nap. But anyways, right, I was wondering as well, maybe should there be intervention at an earlier age, because people are not dating very much nowadays as well, you know, like so like another stat that I was looking up, right, like in a survey by Marriage and Parenthood, like of the 2,800 singles, right? 50% are not dating, and 38% from that pool have never dated before. And these are people from 21 years old to 45 years old. And I have a good amount of people that I know, right, who are in their 30s, mid 30s, maybe like pushing 40s, who have never dated, have never been in a relationship. So is that a cause of worry? And I think this will probably also be worsened as we go younger and younger, because a lot of the kids now, you know, I mean, it's a cliche, but they're on their phones, and making connections is hard sometimes. So like South Korea has this, in some universities, they have a dating course where students have to go on like compulsory dates. Is that something we should be looking into? Like, I'm not saying that we have to have like university courses for dating, but just addressing that. Because I think in my time, right, when you were caught dating in school, right, if you're a couple in like secondary school or something, they call your parents and then break you up. So, I mean, then Like then suddenly at 28 years old, you're supposed to find a boyfriend.
They did
No,
Or
like
25.
immediately after you graduate,
Yeah,
your mom's like, "Where's your boyfriend? Where's your girlfriend? Like we're getting married."
You
know.
broke us up, mom.
Yeah, it's like whole secondary school, you're not supposed to date. Then after that, immediately you graduate, you're supposed to have grandchildren for your parents.
like every Chinese New Year or family gathering.
exactly.
They
Where's your
pressure you.
boyfriend? Where's your
So much
girlfriend?
so that people hire these sort of fake boyfriends or girlfriends to come to the family event, right? It's like an industry, right?
Oh man.
I had a constituent once who came to my Meet the People session and he asked me for dating advice. He said, and
what was your
apparently
advice?
He had a series of unfortunate events happen to him in relation to a scam. But anyway, he reflected on his experiences and he came to the realization that the root cause was that, he didn't have a partner. So he asked me for my advice. So I told him, and I guess this is my response to you too. I mean, I'm probably not the best person. I don't have any training or deep professional expertise on this question. So I don't really know. I know there were attempts in the past to have a government type of intervention.
I think they still have it
SDU.
now. SDU.
SDM.
SD.
Yeah, they
They
changed it to SDM.
Because last time when they call it SDU, people say single, desperate, ugly, right?
No, they changed it because previously there was SDU is for like degree holders. And then
Oh.
SDS
Oh.
for the
Wow.
You're so-
uneducated masses.
Eugenicist.
Wow, damn.
Yeah, so now after they realized that the gap is narrowing, they decided to just mix it together. As far as I remember.
My friend was telling me about like this singles cruise that you can go on at reduced rates. And then
Really? You mean there's
Yeah.
a subsidy for that?
I don't know, but she passed me this link. Like I guess if you're a single person and you want to go on a cruise ship,
Jerry, what is your face? Jerry, what is that face?
why are you so judgmental?
Yeah, why are you like so like
Some
grossed
people just
out?
want to find love.
I already don't like cruises to begin with.
I remember there used to be this old, I don't know, I think none of you will know this show. It was called The Love Boat.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
I've watched like snippets on it.
Yeah, there are snippets on YouTube. So it was about this passenger cruise liner, and then every single episode of the show, someone will be falling in love, and
So is that what we have to do? We just have to gather like all the single people and then put them on a boat and then ship them out and then make them like I don't know date each
Get into the
other.
middle of the ocean.
You find a partner. If you don't find a partner, you're not coming back to Singapore.
should that be a compulsory 5-day OBS course? Is it for adults where they get to mingle? No, I'm just
Yeah,
joking.
yeah.
New
I'm just
national service.
joking. I'm not advocating that.
I think that's a good idea actually. Maybe more than 5 days. You need a bit more time, like a month.
Yeah, I don't know what really can be done so much. I know that this is kind of more of an issue in Singapore than in many other countries. It seems from the data that I've seen, although I probably haven't looked into it as much. But what can we do? I guess. I mean, we have to reflect on it. We have to work on our attitudes.
Is
We have
this
to figure out
even
why this is
something
happening.
that the government can solve?
Yes. So yeah,
I always feel like this is one of those things where maybe we are just like unfairly asking the government to solve too many of
Yeah.
our problems.
are we
Like,
crossing the line?
If you are undateable, I don't know what Mr. Leon Perera can do for you other than give you like some fatherly advice, fatherly sage advice. But then at the same time, it's also like I don't know what is the government realistically expect to do.
But
in
I
such
guess like
situation?
in a way, like sometimes like our cultural attitude is also shaped by institutions, right? For example, I don't know if it's still happening now because I graduated many years ago. But for example, if you are dating in secondary school and then your parents are called and then you have to break up, then like it creates a very unhealthy attitude towards dating, right? Or
But
like,
then on the flip side, it's like you think about what you're asking. It's like, secondary school, then they start dating, then they don't focus on their studies. Then we are kind of like back at square one. In like, I don't know what exactly the cultural attitudes we should adopt. One way or the other is like it's kind of
there's
your
always trade-offs though.
yeah, it's kind of your own personal values,
Like
right?
you focus on academic and then you like grow up and you're 35 and then you cannot find a boyfriend. Then
okay,
then there's no like more babies for the country,
Okay,
right?
so maybe Mr. Perera, let me just quiz you on this, right? Like, do you think we are just too academically, too money driven, too focused on materialistic things to the point where we just are becoming undateable, rapidly turning undateable?
The conversation has taken an interesting turn.
Yeah.
You did not expect this.
But that's good. That's good.
I don't know why I'm here.
I don't know whether it's the materialism per se. I really don't know. I mean, I haven't looked into it. I don't have any research, but my sense is that it may not just be that, I mean, I don't think it's just that people don't want to date and they just want to focus on their career. I mean, clearly you can do both, right? It's just a question of the willingness. I think what we need to do is just make sure that those people who want to find a partner, for want of a better word, there are no impediments to that. They have the means to do so. They find it, based on the societal attitudes, the culture that we have, the dominant culture.
But what if
the country, they can do that. They don't find it difficult to do that.
But what if the impediment is themselves? Like let's say I'm just like a unbearable prick, right? Then like what?
Okay, so if you're an unbearable prick, right? Don't find a girlfriend because you inflict torture on her and don't procreate.
No, but then the problem is I can't even find a girlfriend. Like that's the thing, right?
Then
like,
good lah, just stay that way.
I don't know if I guess the whole crux of this conversation is there even like intervention to begin with, and there's a lot going on right here, right? In terms of like dating, it's not just about like, oh, I'm rich, I have a stable job, I am a nice guy, then therefore I am deserving of a partner. That also doesn't really happen overnight either. And I'm just not sure, like, is there even a solution to this? Because we keep talking about fertility, and the whole thing has to start from somewhere, right?
Okay.
Start from you being dateable.
Let me change the topic. All right. So kind of related to the materialism, right? Recently there was an exchange in Parliament between you and Minister Grace Fu about whether Singapore is a developed country or not, right? And I guess it's interesting because we think that we live in so much material wealth in Singapore, right? And we are all hustling for it, and we are all like trying to kill ourselves to get money so that we can buy the freaking expensive BTO and HDB flats, right? And then so when I heard from Minister Fu that Singapore is actually a developing country, I was kind of shocked. And to give some context, right, it was because there's this thing called the COP27, where they had a fund for like countries that are kind of like affected by climate change or like loss and damage funding, and developing countries can actually claim from this fund, right? And then so you raised the PQ, I think. Right, and then you said that should we be a donor instead of a claimant, right? So are we a developed country or are we a developing country?
Okay, before I answer that question, just to round off with John, if I may.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've changed the. I just wanted to round off. I think so. If I may, some people may choose to be single as a very deliberate, a well thought through choice, and I think we should respect that. But for those people who are trying to find a partner but can't, I think it's not a government solution that's needed. I think John is completely right. It's more of a national conversation. It's more on a reflection on what kind of values we want to practice in our interpersonal relations with one another, and then thought leaders, opinion leaders should try and propagate those values. I think it's more that sort of process. So developed and developing countries, I think the labels that are adopted by countries don't necessarily correspond to the GDP per capita in every case. So in some international fora, Singapore is defined as a developing country. And there are some other countries which also have high GDP per capita in the world. For example, I believe some of the Gulf states are also defined as developing countries. But I think in that particular exchange with Minister Grace Fu, the point I was making was that we can choose to make a contribution. And no one is saying it needs to be a vast contribution that's going to break the bank, but it can be a calibrated contribution simply because the countries that need support for biodiversity, there are many countries which are really impoverished countries where the government has very little resources, so it behooves us to do that, to do our part to support biodiversity around the world. Because I think, when you talk about biodiversity, when you talk about climate change, carbon emissions, these are global issues. And every country needs to contribute based on what they can contribute. So I think that's probably where the conversation should be had.
Is Singapore doing enough for climate change and, inspiring people to do the same? Because you also mentioned about how Singapore should be a leader, right, in such issues, and then to take charge and then lead the way for other people, because Like, I think that's the right thing to do.
But then, okay, here's
Oh my God, are you going to say climate change is not real?
No. Here's the center right perspective, which I'm politically inclined towards. So I think of it like this: whether or not we are developing or non-developing, kind of is besides the point. As a whole, our total carbon footprint, like impact on the environment writ large across the globe, is maybe less than 1%. And it doesn't seem like it's very fair for us to be so-called a donor when there are countries out there that's contributing like way more to the climate crisis, and then somehow we are the one that needs to be responsible for paying for certain things. So maybe it's like a two-part question. So one of it being, and then it's like there's the.
But the thing is, like, okay, let's say, USA, like, they have like a huge climate footprint, right? Carbon footprint. And then, but like the impacts of climate change is not just like, oh, you contribute so much, you kena so much, right? Like, you feel it across and globally. And like, you can hear like the heat
we kena a lot also. Like, we would be in the center crosshair of like climate change, right? I mean, we are an island nation, literally surrounded by water, and we could just be drown underwater in like 2100. But I guess, that's my point, right? Which is, if we are the one that's going to be like right at the center of the crosshair, why shouldn't we be a claimant? Maybe we just.
I think we are all conscious that we have to prevent some water world scenario that Kevin Costner or movie that bombed at the box office.
I'm so pleased that you know this movie. It's such a fantastic movie.
Bring up all these old pop culture references, right? But I think we should not just look at the contribution to total carbon emissions, but the contribution to total carbon emissions per head of population. And I think if you look at that per head of population, ours is actually quite high. Of course, we are producing a lot of goods for export to the rest of the world too. So, I mean, I think you got to take that into account. But I think to come back to the issue, the question that NG posed, there is more that we can do. I think for the Workers' Party, we were championing a plastic bag charge, and I'm glad that finally we are taking steps to move in that direction. But there are more things that we can be looking at. And we should look at it in terms of not just an increasing cost, but also an opportunity. Like if you have more carbon taxes, which is something that we have talked about, that we should gradually increase this going forward. That could also nudge industry to come up with more solutions that are innovative, come up with new products where we can be leaders, and where those kind of products can drive our economy. Those kind of innovations can drive our economy. So we should be a leader in electronic vehicles going forward, in EV charging infrastructure going forward, in carbon capture and sequestration technologies going forward. These kinds of things, solar panel installation and maintenance, for example. These are industry opportunities as well, green tech. So I think there's certainly more things we can be doing. And I think going back to what something Angie said, and this is actually a more fundamental issue, I think the tremendous opportunity we have in Singapore is to set an example, for other countries. So right now we have been very good in terms of how the world perceives our efficiency, our technocratic ability, our good civil service, our urban planning. These are all the things that Singapore is very well known for and is very famous for. And I think the glass is half full in that sense. What we also need to put in there is that kind of democratic content in our society, the kind of ownership that everyone feels that their voice can make a difference. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, having a strong civil society, having very robust debate about issues publicly. I think if we fill in the other half of that glass, the Singapore model, so to speak, can really be a powerful beacon to other countries, because the kind of model you adopt as a country now is very contested, across the whole world. And there are a lot of people who are becoming very disillusioned with the liberal democratic model that you see in the US and the UK because of Donald Trump, because of Brexit, because of many other things. And people are saying, well, this can be dysfunctional. So I think, we have the potential here in Singapore to combine that sort of efficiency mindset with also the heart of a democracy mindset. And if we can combine those two things together and we can show the world that those two things can work well together, that's a very powerful model. And we can make a real difference.
One of the things that we often talk about here in the Longkang, right, is kind of like the lack of innovation within Singapore. And a lot of it stems from a kind of very rigid educational system, a very rigid way of thinking, like mindset, which I agree with. And by the way, these three are illustrators. They are, and I used to be a practicing artist. I've given up on that sphere, and I've encouraged the three of them to do so, but then they have refused my advice, and now they are complaining nonstop. But basically,
I can't afford a flat. I'm complaining. I can't afford.
Okay, so basically, but I think all of us are overseas trained, right?
Except for me.
Except for that one, yeah. And he's the poorest, so that goes to show something.
Yeah, you draw so many politically sensitive stuff.
It closes as many doors as it opens.
So I guess that kind of like brings us back to the next thing. I actually really agree with the innovation in like green tech and like pushing boundaries in that particular regard. I think energy is gonna be moving forward the biggest question that we are going to be facing. Like in the age of AI, right? There's no need for people to be like running around doing the most mundane stuff anymore. But how do we power the AI? And that's like purely an energy question. And we definitely can't be just burning fossil fuel to power the industries in the future. So, but then it goes back to this thing. How do we even begin? Like, what is the mode for us to kick off this journey whereby Singaporeans can start to innovate, start to be creative, start to be, like pushing boundaries if we don't even do it ourselves currently?
Well, I mean, for one thing, I would say that being a cartoonist doesn't mean you're poor. And I mean, look at Stan Lee. I bought a book about Stan Lee's life. I gave it to my son as a birthday present. But more seriously speaking, I think innovation is going to be the key going forward. I think John made a great point in this AI era, raw cognitive ability is not the name of the game anymore. It's really going to be more about not about winning the game based on someone else's rules. It's about inventing a new game, based on your rules. It's about challenging the boundaries that you're given. So I think we have to nurture these traits in Singapore, and I think a big part of that has to come back to the education system. This is something we've spoken about. We have to manage this whole content mastery part of the education system, which is not going to be as relevant in the future, given AI, right? And we should focus more on meta skills so that you have the tools and the skills to pull content when you need it and to analyze and look at that content with a critical mind. And then we should free up time and headspace, for kids in the education system to nurture other types of qualities, your leadership, your confidence, your creativity, your communication skills. So I mentioned this example that I brought in Parliament, I think in 2016 or 2017, which is that for some of the schools in Singapore, when you have a parent-teacher meeting, right, you will have a parent-teacher meeting that is quite interesting. A lot of the conversation is really about, okay, what are the areas where the child needs to improve, and this is what we all need to work on. That means as a parent and as a school. I'm not saying every school is like this, but that has certainly been my experience and experience of some people I know. But then if you look at some of the international schools, for example, okay, and there could be some local schools that do this as well, you can have a very different parent-teacher meeting where the parent-teacher meeting is run by the child. And you get the child to come and say, okay, Johnny, why don't you present what you have done in the last term, and why don't you present what you plan to do? What are the goals you have set for yourself in the next term? And you present that, and then you have a discussion around that. So that is so much more edifying for the child in a way, You are a subject, rather than object, rather than.
The Singapore mindset would be they'll grade the child. It's like, you 5 out of 10 fail. Like you don't even think
your goals are not ambitious enough. But that's very defeatist though.
I often bring up this thing, right, where I have a younger brother. He did like a poly, and one of the questions in one of his exams was, what is your opinion on this? And then he wrote out his opinion, and then they marked him wrong. And this is like the quintessential Singaporean
I remember
experience,
that when we were doing literature, right, like also because literature is very freeform, it's not like math, right, 1 + 1 = 2. And then I remember one time when I was in school and doing my questions, right, and then it was also an opinion thing, and then the teacher was like, that's wrong. I'm like, huh? But you asked me for what I think. How can anything be wrong?
Okay, before we head on to other things, let me just read out a couple of the comments.
From YouTube Live.
Yeah, from YouTube.
yeah.
Okay, so we have CMR. Looking sharp, Perera. Okay. And then the orange walls are a nice touch. Okay, all the kitties are
what special effects did you all do to make me look sharp?
I'm not doing anything. Yeah. But then maybe it's the lighting. The great light. The orange wall really does well for your skin.
It's a very warm tone.
Yeah.
Gives you a bit of a rosy flush.
Balbinda, sorry. The kitties are cute. Wow.
Oh, thank you.
They're all cute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Give a collective meow.
Meow.
Bobina, you're the best.
Yeah. And then okay, so regarding the fertility issue, Balbinda also mentioned not enough space to date. There's no privacy with too many buildings. Many people squash in a small country. Okay. Then regarding the climate issue, policies to do right about climate damage is a moral issue also by Balbinda. Thank you very much for that. Yep, absolutely no one disputing that. And then Izil D, regarding the innovation question, pushing boundaries means failing till you succeed, but the KPIs don't work that way. Which is also this is a big deal, right? In terms of how we decide to measure success. Like being an entrepreneur, I cannot count the number of times that I've encountered failure after, and sometimes it's just consecutive, right? And it's just so demoralizing. You try to chase after this one contract, doesn't work out, and then it's like, okay, time to move on, doesn't work out, and then after COVID hits, and then it's just like, oh my god, the government shutting down everything, nothing is working, and then it's just like, why am I doing all this for? But then you kind of have to push through, and I don't know if this is a thing that's also inculcated within our society where we have to say okay, you have to fail, you have to.
It's okay to fail. Not you have to fail, but it's okay to fail. Then you just pick yourself up afterwards instead of just being branded as a failure the first time you fail, right?
It's what you do after you fail, and not the failure itself, or not the success itself as well.
Right. I mean, there's this expression called fail forward, right?
Yeah.
And there's another expression called
you can fail upward like the. Can I?
Okay, let's not go there. We know who.
Some people can fail upwards very well. CEO after CEO.
Some fail upwards, some only fail downwards.
Yeah, most of us fail downwards, of course.
Has your kid ever failed a subject before?
Oh, yes.
Done. Oh, okay. Yeah. What do you talk to them about? How did you address the issue?
Very straightforward. I just said that, look, this happens, and it's a part of life, and don't let that get you down. Just learn what you can learn from that, and move forward, and make sure you don't sell yourself short, basically, and that's the best we can do. That's all we can do. Figure out what your natural inclinations are, what you have a passion for, what you can be good at. And just move forward on that basis, yeah. I think I think to the point that I think Angie was making about failing, we do have some ways to go in terms of our social attitudes to accept that failure can be a part of a reasonable career, and to give everyone another chance, and not to demand that all our leaders or all our role models have to have this pristine, pure kind of CV, where you just keep going up and up and up and up, and you never go down, you never have a setback.
You don't even need a pristine CV to go up.
So I would argue, right, that sometimes
some people
I feel
just float upwards.
Some people just I don't know, they're very buoyant,
like
a jellyfish in the ocean.
They started up and then just slowly float down via parachute. Yes,
the parachute is a hot air balloon and goes up.
I would like that parachute too.
Yeah. Anyways, I was just saying that I sometimes feel despair because I feel like the social attitudes are the hardest to change. Convincing people to recycle, convincing parents to be. I mean, your child is very lucky that you said that to them. I can assure you that my father would not have done the same thing. Yeah, like I'm the type of kid that when I get B3 for my math, like my father comes down to my school and he demands the presence of the teacher. And then the three of us will sit down and we'll go through I'm not kidding, we'll go through the paper to see where I made the mistakes. and then I'll be berated for each mistake.
Right.
I'm not kidding, right?
Then
And I'm not
why-
the only person. This is sort of very deep-seated attitudes towards failure, towards education, towards achievement. And pardon me for being so defeatist. It's not something. Even if you had the might of the political party behind you, you can control the fate of the country. It's not something you can change because the damage has already been done.
Is that your villain origin story then?
Yes. I'll put on my
That's
mask.
why he likes being here.
This is why you're like
Yeah,
this. Oh
that's
my
why
god.
he loves it when we berate him. He makes him feel loved. Oh my god.
Therapist.
This is
That's some
your
Jungian shit,
superhero backstory. Yeah, you can make a movie out of that.
It's your Pavlovian effect. Yeah.
My goodness.
Like
Oh
we
no.
ding the bell and then you're like, please hurt me.
Oh dear.
Tell me I'm not worthy. Tell me I'm not deserving.
Just hit me, daddy.
I have a similar story. So when I was a kid, I loved cartoons. I loved drawing cartoons. I just loved drawing, and that was my passion. So I would just get lots of paper and I keep drawing every day, and I wasn't studying as much. Like this was the early primary school, so I didn't do so well in early primary school. And then there came a day when my father and mother sat me down and they had a very harsh talk with me, and they said that you have to really change the way you spend your time. So I still remember it to this day because it's a bit traumatic, and traumatic things stand out in my memory.
But good thing you didn't become Hitler.
Yeah, he was a painter, wasn't he? Yeah.
Well, what I did at the time was I bawled my eyes out and then I tore up all my drawings.
Oh my
So my
God.
parents
The
were very
rage.
taken aback. They said, "No, we don't mean that you don't draw at all." But,
Right. But you just have to show them.
Right.
You have to show your dominance.
But
Interesting.
No, I think how do you bring about societal change? Not easy, Not easy. It's definitely not up to politicians. But I think I would say not just politicians, but public figures. Even you guys are Longkang Kitties, right? I mean, everyone can model the right kind of attitudes, and that's how change comes about, You have catalysts, you have opinion leaders who can bring about change, and sharing our stories, making things happen, showing people that different pathways are possible. I think this is how you kind of bring about change, moving away from that fear of failure, allowing people to take more risks. I mean, being an entrepreneur, the roller coaster journey that John was referring to. I founded a business 23 years ago. I can remember around the time of 9/11, 2001, right?
Oh,
The terrorist attacks. So around that time,
Yikes.
my company was very small. We had about less than 10 employees. We lost our biggest customer account. I think in October definitely in October.
What product or service was it?
It's market research and some degree of consulting. So we provide this to MNCs. And around October of 2001, we so that was a huge chunk of our revenue. So I was really befuddled how to make payroll and rent and everything, for the next couple of months. So we're doing everything we could, stressed out of your mind. Then in January 2002, we won an even bigger contract than the contract that we lost, And actually, we still do that particular contract to this day, practically over 20 years later. So it's a roller coaster.
The power of
Can
perseverance.
but I guess can I just bring up the point that there is a certain sort of privilege to being able to persevere? For example,
Oh no, Angie, why you gonna go there?
Okay.
Why you
No,
gonna
but-
go and shit on his parade? This is heartwarming story about endure, perseverance. 9/11, we got through it. And it's just like, excuse me, sir, aren't you just a little bit privileged?
Let me just segue because I faced that as well. There was there are a few years where I did it as a freelancer. I didn't get work for months and months, right? And of course you're panicking because you're like, oh my god, is this the end of my career? No one's gonna remember me. Should I switch and then go I don't know, go do something else? I don't know, sell insurance or what? And then but because I had savings, right, and I didn't have to pay rent because I'm still living with my dad, right? Then I could tide through those months where I had zero income, and I think that is also in part being good in the game. Sometimes it's just outlasting everybody else. The longer you are in the game, the more you're well known and the more people come to you. At least, I think this is the case for many people. But I know a lot of my friends, right, who graduated the same course as me, but they couldn't go through those periods because they had to support the family, or they had bills to pay, and then they just can't have months of uncertainty financially. And to go back to something that you brought up in Parliament, right? You were talking a little bit about like the anti-poverty policies, right? And you brought up this term, which is very interesting for me, which is called bandwidth tax, right? And could you talk a little bit about that and what it means?
Yeah, and before I do that, I just have to say I fully agree. I mean, there is some degree of privilege here. I mean, so not everyone would be on a level playing field when it comes to setting up a business. I mean, if you are struggling to just pay the bills, then that is very difficult for you to do. Whereas if you are living with your parents, which I was when I first set up the company that I founded, I mean, then you have a few more options. So I do acknowledge that. And by the way, I would definitely buy insurance from you, Angie.
Okay, thank you. I know. So like my first client will be you, if it ever happens that way, I will go to you. But I guess the other thing is, like the other thing is also because failure for somebody who is poor is a lot more massive, right? Because sometimes they go into debt and they cannot climb out of debt. And I think you mentioned a statistic, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something like 20% of the bottom financially earning people are actually spending more than they earn, right? And it's a compounding kind of thing. Like if you every month you spend more than you earn, then like your debt is only going to get bigger and bigger, right?
Yes, this is from the household expenditure survey, where the bottom, I think it's about 20%, are officially spending more than what they earn. So the gap has to be made up for in some way. That gap could be made up for by dipping into your savings, or by getting some informal incomes from some source that is somehow not captured in the survey. I don't know, but that's pretty shocking. Bandwidth tax, that's a huge thing. So if you are struggling in conditions that, for want of a better word, can be described as poverty, right? You're struggling to pay the bills. You could be living in a rental flat. You may not be living in a rental flat. You could be living in a 3-room flat or some other setting, or you could be renting a room somewhere, and the rents being the way they are now, that rent could be very, very high, takes a chunk of your disposable income. So it's not just people living in rental flats. I think poverty also affects other people, elderly couples in 3-room flats who are unable or unwilling to monetize their flat, for example, young families who are renting a room, and so on and so forth. Then you are so preoccupied with just survival, right? That you don't have the headspace to take longer term decisions, to turn your life around, to think a little bit more long term, like what kind of skills can I acquire? What kind of pathway can I put myself on that is going to be a progressive pathway for me, because you're just so preoccupied with the present moment. And I think there's a whole ton of research out there to suggest that if you're in conditions of stress like that, you cannot think so clearly, and you don't have the same capacity.
I think you mentioned it takes off like some kind of IQ points of your cognitive ability, right?
Right. It does. And this has been quantified by researchers. So I think we as a society have to do more. So this goes to the whole point about the war on poverty. I think we do need to have that political will to wage a war on poverty here. So those people who are in poverty, those children who are born into poor families, I mean, they didn't choose to be born there, right? If they are living in an environment where you can have 9 people living in a 1-room flat, for example. So I was reading a scholarly work currently, which talks about one example of that, in Singapore. So that's the kind of environment you are growing up in. So what more can we do to help them break out of that cycle? So I suggested some ideas. My colleagues have also brought many ideas about how we should revamp the whole financial assistance regime to give larger quantums for a longer period of time, but conditional on certain types of behaviors that will help the family break out of the poverty cycle. So, for example, committing to attendance for your children in early intervention programs or other kinds of programs, committing to healthier behaviors in terms of just the health of the family, going for health screening, attending financial literacy classes, things of that nature. I think there's definitely more that can be done, in this regards. And it's not just a question of social justice, although that would be enough to make the argument to me. It's also a question of just unlocking the potential of everyone in Singapore. So it really goes back to that whole concept of what kind of a country do we want to be, and what do we need to do to make everyone feel that I'm fully a citizen of this country, So if you unlock everyone's potential, there will be economic benefits downstream, definitely. I mean, there could be some Elon Musk who is a child right now growing. I don't know whether it's the best example, but anyway.
It's one example.
I can be criticized for that example, but anyway, I'll go with it. I mean, there could be an Elon Musk who is a child growing up in a rental flat right now. And that Elon Musk from Singapore may never realize his or her full potential because of all these impediments, right? So we could actually draw benefits in a very pragmatic, very economic kind of way if we take this approach to policy.
I think what I really liked about one of your suggestions is actually streamlining the sort of things, places that they can apply to for financial assistance, because a lot of times, I think they are the kind of schemes that they apply for is across multiple agencies, I guess, or ministries. And then so like there's a lot of paperwork involved, and then there's a lot of people to keep track of all the different schemes that all this same person is applying for. So I think like streamlining it makes a lot of sense. In the sense that the person applying for it will have less to do, and then the people who are administering it out also has less to do.
Absolutely. For example, right, sometimes when you make an appeal, whether as an MP or an individual can also write in, to appeal for financial assistance or to appeal for a fine, to be lowered because you don't have the money to pay that fine. Sometimes the response comes back that, can you produce this whole bunch of documents, pay slips, CPF statements, medical certificates, so on and so forth. Is there more we can do? Because I mean, for people in that position who really don't even have, who are struggling to get the money to pay a fine, to pull together all of those documents and to scan them or to send them through. I mean, that takes time.
Which, by the way, we know for a fact the government can just retrieve those information, and you can just like consent to it, like with SingPass or whatever. Yeah, but
can we have a portal? So this is one of the ideas I raised. Just a simple portal. You can click, say, okay, all the information you want. I give it to you to evaluate. For example,
Yeah, I mean, yesterday I very happily met a social worker, complete stranger. Then we had a conversation, and she was talking about. And so I asked her this question. I said, "If you had the power, I give you magical power, right? And you could make changes in the system. What would you change?" And she's a person who left the industry because she was so burnt out. Right. And one of the things that she said, right, was that she wants less paperwork, less administrative things, because she cited a case where, so like she works with youth, right, like at-risk youth. And then like sometimes she has to write reports, right? So for example, one youth might be involved in the youth court and then also MSF. And then she has to generate 2 reports for both of these ministries, right, or these institutions. And I asked her, like, okay, are there any overlaps in the report? She's like, yeah, it's about 80% similar, but I have to individually write it for each, institution. And then that takes up a lot of her time. And then she also, on top of that, has to write reports for the organization she's working with, like update reports and stuff. And then this is on top of the work that she has to do with the people, like counseling the youth, talking to them, like going down, when they like something happens and stuff like that. So she was very, very burnt out by all these things. And I mean, I asked her, I was expecting her to say, "Oh, I want more pay" or something like that, and that was not even mentioned, even though that's very important. That's very important, right?
That is very
we have
important.
to pay our social workers, but that was not even in the top 3.
No, that's fantastic. I think the social workers we have, generally speaking, do a fantastic job. I'm so impressed with them. I have many friends from the sector. I used to be a volunteer with the Family Service Centre for 10 years. And I work with some amazing people who have been an inspiration to me to this day. And many of them are still continuing in this line.
Crazy people.
Crazy people, you could say that. We need more of such crazy people.
Yes, we do.
In fact, one of them who has been in the social work line for about 30 years, and I think I shared this in Parliament as well, told me that in the 30 years or so that he's been in this line, he's now seeing social work cases who are the children of the people that he saw 30 years ago, meaning that there is this poverty trap that is going on, where the poverty is being passed from one generation to another. So this is really the thing. I think when you have conversations about this, sometimes you get a counter argument that, some of the people who need this help, we also don't want to pander to them too much and create a dependency syndrome and make it so easy for them, because they are also partly responsible for their situation. They've made bad calls, they've made bad choices, blah, 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 which, I mean, there's a grain of truth to that, certainly, and I think no one disagrees with that. But first of all, You need to give them the headspace to meaningfully make a change in their life, right? And secondly, you shouldn't punish the children, right? You shouldn't punish their children for the mistakes that they may have made. You should break that poverty trap and allow the children to develop their potential fully, you know. So I think these are the things. But yeah, social workers do a fantastic job. I think they really want to help, you know, but frequently they're constrained by, you know, the framework that they're in, the policies that they have to follow. I'm sure if they had a choice, they would want to do more, you know, I'm sure. And I've kind of seen signs of that. And this is what I sense also from people I know in the profession.
Yeah, I think like talking about the yesterday she also brought up this case where she said that there was this case where she witnessed like the grandmother was in the system, the mother was in the system, like now the daughter is in the system, and then she's a teenage pregnancy. Like, so I guess like probably the next generation is probably also going to be in the system. And she says that like when she talked to some of these young kids, right, they know that they're in this like thing, right, that they cannot get out of because it's very extremely hard. Like when they have help from the government, like it's maybe like a 1 hour session, but then they go back to the conditions that they're in, like really crowded flats, and then maybe like friends who are, you know, like not great influences on them. And then so it's very easy to relapse into like behaviors because there's no space for them to go elsewhere where they can, you know, even just have the space to be alone sometimes.
Absolutely, yeah. You can have a crowding in a very small space. You don't have sufficient space to study, to work, to pursue other things. You know, of course, there has been some progress in some way. I don't think any of us would say that there hasn't been. So there are some study spaces that you can use. You know, whether it's in the school or whether it's in the community. You have the Comling initiative, which I think has come about very recently as a way to try and streamline all the kinds of support for at-risk families in some rental blocks. So, I mean, these are all steps in the right direction, and I'm glad to see that this has happened, but there's certainly a lot more that needs to be done to really break this poverty cycle. And just because some people can do it, I don't think you can look at that and say, oh, then there's no issue, anyone can do it. So I know people who have broken through that cycle. So, for example, there was a mother and a daughter that were living in a rental flat in East Coast GRC. So, you know, Workers' Party is very active in East Coast GRC. I got to know this particular family, and the daughter is academically very bright, and she really applies herself. So she got into NUS. She's doing very well, even though she's living in a rental flat. But you see, these are, I think, a minority of people who manage to do that. So you can't say, oh, just because the minority can do that, everyone can do that, you know. There was a study I came across, I think from 2013 or 2015, which said that the bottom children who are born to the bottom quintile by income, about 15% can make their way to the top quintile. I think this is a rather dated study, so I don't think it's current. I would be surprised if the data is that good right now. But even if you have 15%, you can do that. 85% can't, right? So I mean, you need to address that 85% too. So I think we also have to get away from having this kind of conversation. Oh, because I know this guy, he was born into poverty. And
some PAP MPs also live in rental apartments, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about this in this podcast a lot, right? This whole very dominant narrative that, you know, people are pushing that, oh, rags to riches. If you just work hard enough, if you just really desire it enough and push yourself the hardest. Yeah, but it is happening now. It is, and I feel like it's a bit dangerous, maybe a bit disingenuous. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
I mean, it's empowering. I don't doubt that aspect of it, but yeah, like you said, like 85% don't. Then how?
But even just going out of like talking about the people who are not so well off, like I think in general, like social mobility, globally has been kind of slowing down. I think Singapore is 20th out of 82 countries on social mobility, according to the World Economic Forum report in 2020. So yeah, it's a bit scary, I guess, because like I think everybody just wants to have a good life, right?
Is 20 good or bad? I don't know. 20 is good or bad?
20th out of 82 is not that bad.
It's okay lah.
It's not too bad lah. But we're not the first.
But then like here's the trend that I noticed, right, in terms of like countries with huge social mobility, which is often there's a huge element of chaos within the nation. So let's take China during the 80s and 90s as an example, where there wasn't like so much rigidity in terms of like what people can do, and then this like they have this like overnight explosion of billionaires that just basically like materialize out of nowhere. But there was a very significant cost to it as well. So we have like, for example, the melamine, the baby powder, right? We have people really like making really unscrupulous decision in order just to turn the dollar, to pull themselves out of poverty, to scam others. I think a lot of the current scammers are operating out from like places like India, China. So all this represents opportunity for the people who are in poverty, but at the same time, all of these are elements of chaos that seems very difficult to contain, and then upon containment reduces social mobility. There's this really weird tension that is going on. Like, we need to have some chaos so that people can rise to the top without restraint, but at the same time, we also need to have rules in place so that people don't like do dumb shit, do illegal criminal activity, right? So this is often the tension that we have to navigate. What would be your prescription, Mr. Perera, like in terms of like, or do you even agree with my assessment? That's number one. Number two, if let's say you do agree, what would be like your prescription to something like this?
First of all, please call me Leon. Don't call me Mr.
Okay.
We scared.
All right, Leon. Yeah.
I think, well, what you said, I don't know if we need to choose between one or the other. So you're saying that, if you free up the rules, you have a more dog-eat-dog kind of a free market kind of environment, then people may be able to rise up based on street smarts and that kind of a thing. I mean, the way I would put it is that you have to have an environment which allows for different pathways, So, for example, one huge subject is trades jobs, right? So people who are more vocationally inclined, people who are more interested in trades jobs or jobs that involve a technical skill rather than academic accomplishment, right? We should make sure that those jobs are sufficiently well paid, they have good conditions, they have career progression. People who go into that line can eventually maybe set up their own business, be it in aircon repair or plumbing or whatever it is, carpentry, So this is a huge subject. I've talked about it, my colleagues have talked about it in Parliament. There's a lot more that we need to do in that regards, And part of that also is defending that kind of Singapore core and the trades jobs and making sure that those jobs are attractive enough to attract Singaporeans in. And then at the same time, you can complement with some new citizens from other countries who are very, very skilled in trades jobs and make them into citizens of Singapore. So you have a strong pool there. So I would say you got to have different pathways. There doesn't have to be just one pathway. We do well in school, and then you have this pristine, pure CV. We were talking about this. When you just keep getting promoted, and you have a flawless career and so on, we've got to get away from that. And sometimes the prison is in the mind. So I'm reading this scholarly work I told you about inequality and educational inequality in Singapore. And one of the findings from this book, which is based on ethnographic research with very poor families, is that sometimes the children feel intimidated and they feel that, well, if I study very hard and I do very well and I go into a very good class or a very good school, I will find myself out of place. I won't be able to fit in. I may be looked down upon. I may not be able to keep up because I will be in a class with people who have so many more advantages than I have in a very different kind of life situation. So therefore, I will not want to aim high. I will want to aim low academically because that's more realistic, that's more achievable. So we have to also counter that, and I don't just mean in an academic sense. I think there are different pathways you can pursue academically, and we shouldn't stigmatize people who want to pursue that vocational path. But I mean, just in a general sense about, who am I? What are my prospects? What are my future? We have to get rid of that kind of self-stigmatization, where you feel, hey, I don't want to overreach because then I won't be able to sustain that, I don't know if that answers your question.
We have a few more comments coming in. So let me just read a couple of them. Koei Neo, we should relook at how we calculate marks. Can effort be provided more weightage and praises for achieving certain benchmark? This will create a culture of success. Is the mother of all failures. So this is regarding previously our education, the conversation.
Right, participation, I think was also right. Yeah,
correct. And then We have another one by the same fellow. Culture can be changed, just need more time and effort. Suggested reading, this is what inequality looks like by Teo Yu Yen. Yep. Charlene says hi Charlene. And then after that, Charlene is one of our long-time listeners, so thanks for joining in. Okay.
Yeah, I think that whole thing about there's this old chestnut that in some countries, right, the student will raise their hand in the class even though they're not sure they have the right answer.
Yep.
But in our society, right, you only raise your hand, you're absolutely sure because you don't want to be embarrassed. You don't want to get it wrong. That fear of failure. So that's the kind of mindset we have to address now.
I also have questions from good friend of the show, Reggie, who is the chief financial coconut at the Financial Coconut podcast. So he's asking, ask him if he's running for Tampines. Haha. So are you running for Tampines?
Please do. I'm in Tampines. I'll definitely vote for you.
Okay. If you can't answer,
yeah. I mean, that is something that the party has a process to decide who will run and not run, and who and where they will go. So of course we cannot comment, but of course feedback is always welcome. And I think we always welcome good people to come and join us. This is very important. Yep. I mean, we always get a lot of encouragement from people say, hey, come here and run here, come and run there. So I think the enabler, the key enabler is we need more good people to join the Workers' Party. So that's my sales pitch. Please, good people.
I think you already have 2 votes confirmed. One is NG, the other one is Reggie. And then,
I didn't know Reggie also in Tampines. Hey, fellow insider.
But now he's working out of Malaysia. I think he's also finding it too costly to work in Singapore.
But a lot of people are doing that. Right?
Yeah. And then the second question is, when are you coming to the Financial Coconut? That's his show. It's actually quite a interesting show, and he has a great reach as well. Like
he talks about economic stuff and money stuff.
Right.
And he did contribute to one of our show as well, which is like during one of our budget episode. So this guy is very knowledgeable in terms of money aspect, and he's actually kind of like my pseudo mentor now for monetizing this podcast.
Because we have just been very poor.
Yeah. So
we're just paying money.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Year after year.
Is that why you call yourselves a Longkang Kitties?
Yeah, that's why. We are like all like super ghetto and super deep. So trying to dig ourselves out.
So that means you have to change your name if you become financially lucrative.
No, we will pretend to be poor. We'll just pretend to be poor.
The readout kitties.
Exactly.
Yeah, we level up already.
Well done. No, you can tell him that let's just fix a date. Yeah, I think my colleague Louis Chua, the Sengkang MP, was on the show recently. Yeah, I believe so. So
awesome,
fantastic. All right,
I'd love to go on the show.
Yeah. Anyway, he's a very nice guy, very chill guy. I think if you like hanging out with us, you definitely like hanging out with him.
He haven't said he like hanging out with us.
That's why I said.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
That's why I said
plausible denial.
No, I like hanging out with you all.
Wait. We got something to sweeten the deal. We got alcohol outside later.
Oh yes.
After that
was the only reason I came.
Good to know. Okay, so one of the things that we haven't touched upon, but I'm very curious about, right, is you talked about like delinking the PA from the PAP, right? And also like DPM Wong recently said that public service should be politically sensitive but not politicized. And last year you talked about housing benefits for grassroots leaders, amongst other benefits, right? For I think a lot of the younger generation don't know this stuff. For the younger people, can you tell them what are some of these benefits and why is it important to delink PA from PAP?
The caveat to this is you must pretend you are talking to a 15, 16, 17-year-old.
You have to use like words like bussin' and no cap. And I don't know lah. I don't know. I try.
No lah, but you know what I mean. Like, see whether you can. It's a challenge.
Well, I mean, I have a 15-year-old.
Oh, that's true.
Oh my God.
Actually, you are the expert.
Okay.
Oh my goodness.
You're better than us, probably.
But sometimes they can be a bit precocious and sort of out-talk me, But okay, I'll try.
Okay.
So for volunteers with the grassroots organizations, there are these schemes which can give you a certain amount of preference for applying for housing, and I believe in terms of parking as well, and also in terms of registering your child for primary 1 in a school that you want to register in and which is located within the vicinity of where you do that grassroots work lah. Of course, there are various conditions that you have to fulfill in order to benefit from these schemes. So for the primary one registration preference for grassroots volunteers, I don't know if my language is 15-year-old friendly here. I'm trying. You have to, I think, volunteer for a certain number of years. I think it's 2 years or 3 years of a runway. They introduced this rule a few years back, which to me is kind of funny. I mean, why would you need to, I mean, just think about it for a minute.
The thing about, the thing that was really funny for me is because Minister Chan Chun Sing said that GRLs are volunteers who serve the community actively, but there's a weird sense because you think of volunteering, right? You don't get anything back from it, right? So if you do have advantages or benefits accorded to you from your volunteer work, then it's really not volunteering, is it?
Feels a bit like a quid pro quo thing.
Yeah, exactly, right?
There's something in return.
I mean, those two statements don't quite seem to gel, right? I mean, if you are doing this for altruistic reasons, then there is no reason to give those benefits, right? And they coming back to this, they introduced this rule some years back to say that if you are volunteering in the grassroots, this primary one registration in a choice school is very attractive to many people. And they introduced a requirement to say that you have to be volunteering for a certain number of years before you can get this. You can't just sort of show up last minute, a few months before and get this. So, just think about that for a minute. I mean, why was it necessary to make that change, right? I mean, why was that necessary? I'll just leave that as a question.
I'll just have to say this. The funniest thing is everything you say, right, was my exact experience when I was a volunteer of PA when I was 16, 17 years old. So, and that was kind of
which by the way was about 200 years ago.
200 years ago, yeah.
Jerry's very old.
Jerry's very old. He's
Jerry is about
dinosaur.
geriatric already.
I'm the ancient one here. Yeah. So when I was the teenager, exactly what you were saying, the senior volunteers, those who are still in the People's Association Youth, YEC, they all told me the same thing. Those guys were in their 30s and 35 was the limit, right? If I'm not wrong. So they're all telling me the same thing. Next time you have kids, you're gonna be able to get them into the P1 of your choice, And after a while, I started thinking, I'm like, wait, hang on, are we not volunteering because we want to volunteer? Why are we?
You mean you're not doing this out of the goodness of your heart?
Maybe I'm a little bit too naive, and I'm there to volunteer, right? So in the end, I'm just like, what, forget it. I'm just not going to volunteer anymore.
Yeah, I think when you talk about this, I want to be absolutely clear. I'm sure there are many, many, many PA volunteers who are genuinely altruistic. I've met quite a number. And I've met quite a number of PA volunteers who help out with RC groups, NC groups, whatever it is, who are doing it for the community. And they emphasize that to me. They say, look, we're not coming into this because we want to be political or to get certain benefits. So I think there are many people who do that. But that kind of calls into question why you have these benefits there, and if you're going to have such benefits for grassroots volunteers, then if you want to recognize volunteerism in general, then in theory, you want to extend those benefits to civil society groups who are also volunteering and doing similar work. I'm not saying that we should do that, but I'm saying that why do you single out one group of volunteers to get these benefits, right? So, it's a question. But I think coming back to the point you raised, my colleague, the Aljunied MP, Muhammad Faisal Manap, so he recently made I see Jerry smiling, he recently made a speech in, older people follow these speeches more, I think. Young people don't follow Parliament, old people, that's why Jerry is smiling.
Oh shit, I'm old also then.
You're old at heart.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, you're so kind.
Yeah. So he made a speech saying that, you have this grassroots advisor role, right? Which usually, but not in all cases, usually tends to be fulfilled by a PAP MP or a PAP branch secretary or a PAP candidate in that area who didn't win. So it's a politician's grassroots advisor. And then this grassroots advisor does various things. One of the things is to explain government policies and to take feedback on government policies at the last mile, so to speak. There's this expression that they use called the last mile, which means at the retail level, I suppose. So his suggestion in Parliament was, why can't a non-political person play that role? You know, why can't say a civil servant or someone who has plays a certain role in society, maybe a civil society leader or a person in business or whatever it is, like, you know, why can't someone else play the role? Why does it have to be a politician from one particular party? You know, isn't that introducing a partisan element into something that is governmental, or that ought to be governmental? Because, you know, as a civil servant, for example, you have a role to explain the government's policies and to take feedback to improve those policies. That is what civil servants do. They have to report to the government of the day that is elected. At the end of the day, that's true in all elected democracies. So that is a function that a civil servant can do, right, in theory. So why does that function have to be fulfilled by a sort of quote-unquote politician? There has recently been one case where grassroots advisors were appointed who are not politicians. So that's interesting. And I think Faisal also mentioned that in Parliament. So I think this is a question to consider, you know. But I think definitely when we just look at the whole field of policies, right, I'm sure most Singaporeans would agree that when you are using state resources, you have to take extra care that those state resources that are coming from taxpayer money, our money, right? I mean, if you are taking your own private money to do things, that's fine lah. I mean, you know, any politician can raise their own funds and donations and do certain things that promote their political cause. That's fine, you know. But if you're using state resources, take extra care that you are not giving some unfair advantage to one political party or another. You can represent the state, right? You can represent the government of the day, but that is different from benefiting a political party in a competitive political process lah.
I think the PAP...
Sorry for the rant.
No, it's fine. Please rant away. We love rants.
Oh, you love rants? Huh?
Yeah,
Why didn't you tell me at the beginning?
You want? Okay, we can go some more. We can go some more. But I think the PAP has generally maintained that, you know, the PA is neutral. So they say. And then, but like, I'm wondering, like, is it even possible to delink it? Because, you know, like the PA has been in existence for many, many years, and like with institutions that are like so old and very like has a very deeply entrenched culture, is it even possible to like completely change it at all?
Well, I think if you are talking about I mean, the PA has various functions. Okay, so one of those functions seems to be to explain government policies and to take feedback on those policies. So can you redesign that function? I mean, the PA is a stat board at the end of the day. Like we have various stat boards, GTC, EDB, NEA. The PA is another statutory board. Means that the people who work there are public servants in some sense. The money that goes to fund the PA, the budget of which I believe is somewhere in the region of 800 or 900 million. I can't recall the exact figure, but it's a considerable percentage, well over 1% of the total national budget, I believe. I mean, if I recall this incorrectly, I'll stand corrected, but I believe it's over 1% of the national budget. That means it's coming from taxpayers. I mean, can you look at that function and can you redesign that function to take care, to take caution that you do not give any one party in the whole political ecosystem an advantage over any other party, and you act on behalf of the government of the day, on behalf of the state, rather than sort of bringing a party a party character into it, you know. And one way you can do that is to look at the role of party politicians, and can those functions be played by people who are not politicians. For example, I'm not saying that's the only way we can redesign it, to take better caution in that sense, but that's one way. So that was the suggestion made by my colleague Faisal in Parliament.
So like, I mean, because we are in the Longkang here, we have to push it a little bit. Like, can we just go one step further and also like possibly think about delinking town councils?
No, wait. I think I have a better idea. I think what we need, right, is we need to have a hammer association. I think that's what the worker association. Okay, like we need people that hammer roots or something, and then like working in the Workers' Party GRC, and then they just later magically gain like a whole bunch of benefits, like free parking and whatever.
So everybody just benefit.
Just
game the system.
Instead of delinking, right, we make it even more politicized. I think that's like
who can win.
I think that's the way to go. Like uber politicize everything. All the associations just make it like, let's go 100%. No, I'm just being facetious.
Maybe you can flesh out that proposal.
Send an email to the Workers' Party email.
Okay.
Like, hey man, I got this proposal. This is how you
Raise
can
some funds for it as well.
raise some funds.
No, you're kidding.
We are not a good people to advise you on raising funds.
You should never take our advice here.
Artists here cannot make money, man.
No, none of us should run for office.
Next time when you become the penthouse kitties, then you help us to raise some funds. No, kidding.
Yeah. Because I mean, the town council, right, is a very mundane day-to-day running and making sure, garbage is collected, blah, blah, blah. And honestly, I would rather my MP just, focus their time on reaching out to the grassroots and then, doing research on policies rather than, just, hey, my neighbor, now he's very noisy upstairs. Can you do something about it? I mean, what? Why? I don't understand why that is an
regarding
MP
that, right? There is a flip side to it. I used to think like that, and I think there is a flip side to it, which is when I see elected representative in the US, especially on the local level, like the town, the counties, and when they don't have specific laws in place for the representative to clean up the area, it turns into a shithole. It goes really, really bad. One of the memes in recent times was there was this lady in San Francisco who got she was a victim of the knockout game. So it's kids, they'll just punch people from behind, attempt to knock. Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of this one.
Yeah, so
it's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. Never heard of it. And in response, the city tried to organize meet the people, a rally session, to answer people's questions. And then the city was so filthy that they had to send guys in hazmat suits the night before to clean up the area before the politicians are willing to set foot in that area, which became this a little bit of a meme. And it kind of goes to show, right, where if you don't have people in charge of cleanliness, it simply doesn't get done. But I guess it would be interesting also for you, Leon. Do you think that it is what do you think the responsibilities of members of parliament should be when it comes to day to day, and then there's the day to day, and then there's the macro stuff, right? You need to do research, you need to connect with people, but then there's also the nitty gritty maintenance that somebody's still got to pick up shit at the end of the day.
we give you magic pass. What are the things that you don't like to do, and then you will get out of if you could?
Well, I mean, for us in Workers' Party, we are not calling for a delinking of elected MPs from town councils at this point. But I think it's an interesting question. I think it's an interesting question to reflect on and to think about. And it's probably one of those things that we need to think about as the country evolves and matures. I mean, there are some practical economic reasons to looking at that. Right now, different town councils will run municipal services, be it the cleaning, horticultural, repair works on HDB blocks that are aging. So this is done in a decentralized way. So some have argued that, there will be some benefits if you centralize it under one agency. So that agency will then have economies of scale commercially, and also economies of scale in terms of expertise that can be applied nationally. And that was how it used to be done before town councils were introduced, I think in 1988 or 1989.
Yeah, and it can't be politicized, right? You won't be hey, you're not gonna get a covered walkway because if you don't vote for us or whatever. Right? I mean, I don't think this is happening anymore. At least I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But I think in the past it has been I think there was this very famous question where a kid asked was it Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong about if I don't have I still pay my taxes even if I vote for opposition, right?
Yes, I remember.
Do I still have to do my NS, something like that, right? And then it's kind of it's in the same vein, right? Where your choices as a citizen are kind of politicized by by the advantages given to you that's paid by taxpayer money.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that was something we saw in the past.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening anymore.
Upgrading, it doesn't seem to be happening so much. Which is not to say it won't happen again in the future. I don't know.
We cannot predict the future.
Exactly. But I would say, I mean, of course, on the flip side, having the MP also play that role does attune the MP to very local concerns about what people want to see happening in their state, just at a very basic local level. So there's some benefits to that, so that the MP doesn't become too detached from the ordinary realities that people live in. Like if you are in some remote place and you never come to the HDB, that's not desirable. I mean, we do want MPs to engage, and I think for us in Workers' Party, the Workers' Party leaders and activists are regularly engaged. I mean, not just the MPs, even other leaders in the CEC, other activists in the party. We're doing house visits, we're doing market outreach, state walks, various things to stay in touch with people. And I think there's some benefit. And for the Workers' Party, we are very committed to running the town councils well, to making sure that things are done properly to a high standard, that we listen to residents, we do things. So I think, for that reason, we are not calling for a change to the system right now. But it is something worth reflecting on. For example, another line you can take is that in some other countries, this local government function is subject to a separate election, where you have local government elections, and then those elections, political parties still contest, but those elections are fought on local issues. They're not fought on national policy issues. They're fought on, do you want a bridge here? Do you want to change this playground to the playground design that Jerry wants, where you have more exercise feature rather than children's feature, for example, So that's also worth thinking on. I think these are questions worth reflecting on, as things evolve. But I think for us in Workers' Party, we are very committed to doing an excellent job, and we give our best to run these town councils, and we're not calling for that system to be changed in the short term.
Actually, one question for this is like what you were saying just now is there's a municipal side, and then there's like a political side in some countries, right? So my question is, if that's the case, then what's the mayor position in Singapore for?
Nobody knows.
Because that's supposed to be the municipal side of things in a lot of cities, right? Like the mayor of New York takes care of all the nonsense in New York, but the politics is a different story.
Yeah, you can
choose not to
ask
answer
someone
that
else
question,
that question,
Okay.
rather than ask me that, because I can't really give a totally convincing answer. Although I will say that what they have said is that the mayor can do things at a certain intermediate level between what the elected MP can do, which is just at the ward level, and what the government ministry can do is at the national level. So they are somehow in the middle, and they do things where they lump together a few constituencies, so they get some economies of scale, but it's not to the same extent as national, but it's to some extent. So that's the reason that's been offered. But yeah, I mean, I noticed that New York has one mayor, London has one mayor. We have 5 or 6, I think. So it's interesting.
Yeah, why?
But
why?
You should ask someone else. You get another guess on.
Okay.
Can I?
Do you have recommendations like who we can ask about this?
Invite one of the mayors to come.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Okay, we try. We not so atas yet. Maybe have to wait until we are like penthouse kitties or something.
Can I ask a quick layperson question, if you don't mind?
Sure.
So I've noticed throughout our this entire live stream session that you are a man of data. You love your data, right? Right? Yes, yes, you do.
Yeah, I guess you could say that.
As a parliamentarian, what data is available to you that is not available to the public? Of course, this is the exception is like matters of national security and defense, right? But other than that, what data do you have, like census data or what, that you have but we cannot have access to?
Well, we can file parliamentary questions to get data that is not in the public domain,
Right.
so that we can do. That is not a foolproof method to get data, because sometimes when we file a parliamentary question, we do not get a direct answer to what is asked. Sometimes a reason is given, sometimes a reason is not given, and there are examples of both, But I would say that we can get information that way, and we have gotten information that way in the past. Beyond that, what access to data do we have? Beyond that, I wouldn't say we have. There is a huge difference between what we can access and what the general public
right.
can access. Right now, as far as opposition MPs are concerned, generally speaking, I mean, we will occasionally get briefings on national issues, but it doesn't happen in a very a regular kind of systematized way. So in some other countries, you have standing committees for national security, for intelligence, for different things, and those committees will meet regularly every week, every month, whatever it is, and they will regularly engage with civil servants who give them briefings. Some of those briefings are confidential. And those committees are bipartisan. Usually you have government and opposition as well. So we don't have that structure. We don't have that structure at the moment. We have called for more standing committees in Parliament to play more of that kind of role and also to review legislation. At the moment, we don't have that structure. And the other thing we have called for, which we think would be very, very helpful, is to have an office within the government that provides research to legislators using civil service data. For example, the budget impact. So if you propose something, what will be the impact on the budget of what you propose? Because you need econometric modeling to do that. You can attempt your own econometric modeling, but it's better to have that done by the professional civil service. So you have that kind of institution in the US, in the UK. I believe you have that as well. In Taiwan's legislature, I believe you have that as well.
So it's a norm in some countries.
In some countries, it's a norm.
I was just wondering because you guys have to do research and make policy and write papers on these policies. And then if you don't have if you're unable to get the data to back all that up, or if you're unable to pay for organizations to collect the data for you, then what do? You own self. You only have the same data that I have, which I go to census.org.sg or something, to get.
Yeah, we go to census.org. I mean, there's various sites, and you use public data. I mean, you can get some mileage from using public data. We try to do that. Of course, we don't have a large professional full-time staff to work on that. I mean, that's the thing, you see. We don't have that. The government can draw upon the civil servants, and they can produce policy proposals that have been researched by professionals who are working full-time. So we have to draw upon our own resources, be it volunteers or be it our own efforts, whatnot. So in some other countries, you have this body in the legislature that provides research support to all parties in the legislature. So that is what we have actually been calling for.
So right now, if let's say for some reason you do Lee Hsien Loong a solid favor for some reason.
Are we magical moments?
Yeah, no, we're not. But this is plausible. This is very plausible.
Okay.
Then he's like,
so scared now.
Okay, Leon, bro. Okay, I think you're cool. Okay, I'll give you one ticket, and this ticket, will enable you to get one
piece of data.
Yeah, piece of data, right? That you are not able to get now. What would be that data? What would be that data? It could be any statistic that within the bounds of reason the government should have.
It's the golden ticket to the Parliamentary Chocolate Factory.
We finally get the forbidden fruit.
Leon and the Chocolate Factory.
That would be a very tough one, I suppose. I mean, nothing that you guys have thrown at me so far has stumped me, but I seem to be drawing a blank on that one because there are different things I would love to know.
Right.
So if you ask me to pick out one,
maybe an issue that's closer to your heart. I don't know if you're talking about like education or.
Yeah, I mean there are various things. There are various things. I think some of those things we can PQ, but I guess if you want to talk about a golden ticket. It would have to be something. It would have to be something that we have not been able to get that information from PQs. So again, I'm drawing a blank. So maybe I play my stall for time.
You want to call a friend or not? We got that option. Call somebody like the LO or something. I don't know. Okay, I think we're gonna wrap it up in a little bit because we've gone quite over time because I did promise you 60 to 90 minutes. We've gone a little bit over that. But I'm just gonna read out some questions.
This one not really. I guess it's a question. This one is from Natalie, our Discord moderator. Thank you, Natalie, for doing a good job. Okay, so she asks, you are a tour guide bringing a visitor to Anson Ward. What is one story you will tell this visitor that will cause them to never see this area in the same way again?
Well, I would say that back in 1980, JBJ was active there, and when he would campaign every now and again, I think some supporters would give him a very large hammer. and he
Like
would
a real
hold up, he would hold up that hammer.
Wow.
I think there was a particular supporter who gave him a particular large hammer. There are a few of those large hammers around, something like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So he held it up, and if I'm not wrong, that very same hammer is now in the Workers' Party headquarters. So we have hung it up on the wall.
Like a relic or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that came from that era of the 80s, and it was a supporter who actually gave that hammer to JPG, I believe. Yeah.
Can I just say that one of the things that I love the most when going to the WP rallies during the elections is always how people dress up. Some people like have signs, and there's always this one guy with like a hat, like it's a construction helmet, and he's got like giant flags going upwards. And I just freaking love that guy.
Oh yeah, there's always a guy with
yeah. He's that one very iconic guy. And okay, so I'm gonna ask another question. This is from like Facebook. And it's about 377A. Okay, so like, I think many people, especially people in the activist space or like, in the more liberal sector, were very surprised when the party whip was lifted for the repeal of 377A. Myself as well, because 377A is about criminalization, right, of gay people, and it's not like child adoption or gay people or like gay marriage, right? So like I think a lot of us were surprised that the party whip was lifted. Is that a decision that you agree with? And I guess the other question would be, is WP's party position such that like it's okay to infringe on somebody's I guess
that's a lot of ammunition in one sentence.
Is it okay to
double barrel questions?
Is it okay to criminalize somebody based on somebody else's religious belief in a secular society?
So that's a great question. I mean, thanks for that. I think if you look at what happened in Parliament, and I think this was clarified by the leader of the opposition, Pritam, we did have a party position, and that party position was defined by the majority of the MPs, and that was also clarified and put across by Pritam. So it's not the case that the party said that we're not going to have any position at all. We had a position that was defined by the majority. But having said that, the party decided that we should lift the whip because this was a matter of deep personal belief and conscience. And we felt that it was appropriate in this case to allow everyone to not just express their view, but also to cast their vote based on those deep personal beliefs. But at the end of the day, the party will still have a position that is defined by the majority. Now, this is not so unusual. This has happened in the past. The PAP has done the same thing. There are a number of examples. One example in the past was the Human Organ Transplant Bill, where the People's Action Party lifted the whip. The bill was passed, right? But they allowed MPs to vote according to their conscience in that case. And there are a couple of other examples as well. I won't sort of list them all out right now. But I think that's insofar as the view of the party is concerned, there was a position taken, but I think we felt that on this kind of issue, where there are deep personal beliefs, there are deep convictions involved, it is appropriate to let people express that. But having said that, I think the minority of MPs who voted against a repeal of 377A were also very emphatic in their speeches to say that they were not advocating for an enforcement, a proactive enforcement of 377A. They were not advocating for that, nor were they advocating for example, discrimination in the job market against gay people. So I think that also needs to be clarified.
Yeah, I think I guess the thing is, I think we mentioned this before, it could be this right now, right? But we don't know what's going to happen in the future if the law is still in place, right? Maybe for example, in the USA, abortion is banned. So now in some places, we don't know what can happen. So, but anyways, it's repealed, and I'm glad that it's repealed.
But just to play the angel's advocate now, I've been playing devil's advocate the whole time.
Can you even do that?
Yeah, of course. I'm the angel's advocate now. So I think, actually, I think it's one of those things where I have to agree with the Workers' Party in terms of lifting the whip on this matter. It is a very deeply personal issue, And my experience with religious people, when I talk to them about 377A, they are not, most of them, they are not coming from a position of like hatred, or they like want you to die, or they want you to be discriminated against. They really come from a position of like, in some sense, love. They do want like things to like for you to change. They want you to like connect with God in accordance to their holy book or holy text. And whether you agree with that or not, right, I think it's a separate topic. But for them, they have to follow the word of their creator, and they have to they for them it's really like that. There's this quote from Kingdom of Heaven. It's like you cannot stand before God and say that virtue was not convenient at the time, and this is probably like something for them to consider. On the flip side, like putting the party whip on, like the PAP putting the party whip on this particular issue, having all their members voting in a certain way, that kind of like screams to me is like, or you have to be pro 37.
Okay, I would make the distinction here that, and I just want to clarify my own position. I think like it's okay to, I think it would be very agreeable to me if you lifted the party weight for things like gay adoption, like, you know, or even gay marriage, right? Like, I think that is a religious take that you can have. But on 377A, which involves people potentially being in jail, even though Supreme Court has been like, okay, we're not going to enforce it, I think that's a very different thing than,
yeah, but I mean,
like, you know,
they are voting at this point in time, right? Like, this is the moment in history that they are reflecting upon the vote, and then the 377A has I don't, since the British have left, it's never been enforced.
It has been.
Since the British have left?
Yeah.
So usually their disagreements are far more fiery and involve a lot more
we are
swear
being polite
words.
right now.
Because of your presence, they are behaving themselves, and I quite enjoy this.
Oh, so after I leave, then you'll be...
then I'll be each other's strokes, right?
No, the formation of this podcast was as a result of my disagreement, like fervent disagreement with NG, to the point where it causes Jerry's wife to have a panic attack.
Oh my goodness! It sounds very complex, man.
Yeah.
We should have a separate episode just to deal with that.
Just an additional information. We were arguing about contemporary dance.
So that's like our history, and we are just like
of this podcast.
always just vehemently disagreeing with each other. But you know,
No, but disagreement is good. I mean, disagreement is healthy. I think the truth and the right way forward emerges from debate and disagreement. You know, you cannot determine the truth if everyone just, you have group thing and you all agree. You know,
you can't have like people in charge deciding what is truth, right? And
I feel like the parliament should be a reflection of the Longkang here. So there's like the conservative people, there's the right left wing people, there's people on the fence, and then there's this clown over here, this degenerate clown.
So every court must have its jester. This is my argument.
So okay, since we are like focusing on the jester right now, maybe the jester can give us the magical moment.
And explain the magical moment.
Before we go there, can I just come in very quickly to round off on that? Yeah, I think what was remarkable to me from that whole experience, and you know, it was a profoundly moving experience for me being a part of that debate. I think for all my Workers' Party colleagues, it was as well. What was incredible for me was that we found that unity in diversity. I mean, we had differences over something that is fairly fundamental in a way, you know, as far as private belief is concerned. But we respected the right to disagree. We agreed to disagree. We lifted the whip so everyone could express their vote on the issue of personal conscience. But at the same time, we were united as a team, you know. And you know, the minority of WP MPs who voted in a different way from myself, I mean, I have tremendous respect for them. I had that at the moment. I still do. They're amazing people. They are not people who want to discriminate against some human beings over others. I can assure you, you know. And I think for those who voted in the same way that I did, we also are profoundly respectful of Singaporeans who have a different view on this issue, you know. So there was some common ground, I think, that I mentioned. I mean, even the minority said, hey, you know, we don't want to proactively enforce it. So there's some common ground. But I think that was unity in diversity, you know. I mean, after that vote, we all took a group photo together, which was amazing. And you know, we are great friends. We are great colleagues. I hope always continue to be, you know. Okay, now for the court judgment.
Explain the magical moment.
Okay, so in the Longkang, we have a ritual, sir. It is a ritual where I give a very strange, maybe even absurd hypothetical to our guest. Right, it serves multiple purposes, perhaps for entertainment for our fans, but there is like a hidden test within.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and poor Dr. Chi, who came to Podcast Toys, had to go through this terrible
Trial by fire.
Yeah, trial by fire.
Can I skip this and go straight to the bar?
No, you must.
Priorities.
You must. Let me say that to you because it's a Star Wars hypothetical.
Oh, great.
Yes, terrific.
Oh,
so, you know, in these hypotheticals, you're always like the star of the show, the Jedi, you know, the guy who's like has the magical powers. But in this hypothetical, you are not. Okay, so imagine, I want you guys to imagine, all of you, that you guys know what the Death Star is, right? It's a big ball that can shoot a giant laser, that can blow planets up, right? Angie?
I have actually not watched any Star Wars.
Yes, that's why I feel I need to explain to you because everybody here.
Yeah, I know what it is. Yeah.
It's not a star. It's not
a space
ship,
station.
Right?
No, it's a space station.
Okay.
It's a very it's a moon-sized space station.
So it's a weapon lah, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
No, we're
got
being very divisive here. Star Wars fan and non-Star Wars fan. That's a huge divide. Man.
It's just her.
It cannot.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the only person who doesn't watch it is her. The rest of us are
Fine.
There's no division here. It's
So
just
to give Angie context, right? There is a galactic government called the Empire, and they are in charge of the Death Star. Okay, and you are just an officer on the Death Star. That's your job. Okay, you believe in your government's vision of a united galaxy, right? And then you are just there for work. You are like a officer, technician sort of thing.
9 to
right?
5 guy lah.
Maybe a bit more important, right? Okay, so this is what happens. Okay, the Death Star moves, and then now you are above a planet, right? A planet called Alderaan. And then your superiors tell you, okay, guys, there's a bunch of terrorists on this world. We gotta blow up this planet, right? For the sake of the unity of this galaxy. Okay, and then so you set about doing your work, right? This is your job. Okay, and your rival officer, the person whom you intensely disliked in the beginning, in the same line of Korean dramas, is now your lover, the love of your life. Okay, so imagine this: you have a rival officer, right, who became your love interest over 13 episodes, right? And you are deeply in love with this person, right? So now your lover, okay, they are your rival officer, right? And
so the rival officer is also the lover.
Yes,
both.
your lover, yeah,
Okay.
your lover. Okay,
So it's like a friendly rivalry.
Friendly rivalry, yeah, which ended up becoming lovers, right? Okay, and then while the Empire Council is debating about whether they want to blow up the planet, okay, in the privacy of that room, right, your lover slash rival officer slips on a banana peel, and then their hand or their butt hits the big red button in the Death Star, and before anything happened, right, before your superiors have given the order, a big bad giant laser shoots out from the Death Star and blows up the planet, and millions of people are dead.
And you're laughing.
This is why we call him a degenerate.
No, don't scold me.
You like it, Dan Wong. You like it.
So now the question is this, okay? Okay, you alone know what mistake was made, right? Your lover has made a mistake, right? What will you do now? How will you account to your superiors?
But aren't you supposed to destroy it anyways?
No, we don't know yet. Yet. Yeah, you don't know that because you're just a junior officer, right? You don't know that.
Oh.
Yeah, but you know somebody screwed up. Somebody made a big bad mistake. You could sabotage that person. You could pauto them, right? But they're your lover. What would you do?
Well, I suppose the first thing I would do is go and look to bring to justice the person who designed the whole red button. So that you can just accidentally fall and press a red button and destroy millions of people with no fail-safe mechanism. So I mean, whoever designed that needs to be held to account. I mean, that's the first priority.
Wait, hang on! Don't forget there's a 2-feet pod.
Yeah,
that
also 2 feet
proton torpedoes can go in and blow up. The whole Death Star was just a calamity waiting to happen anyway.
Although apparently that the flaw was deliberately put in there, right?
Yeah.
That someone was
supposedly
Right.
according to Rogue One, right? Yeah. Anyway, but okay. I think if it was me being me, and knowing what we know about the Empire it is basically an evil, authoritarian kind of government that is more interested in strengthening its power and its position rather than the well-being of the people. Although there is a certain ideology where they rationalize to themselves that that's good, and many people in the political sphere who do bad things also rationalize that they're actually doing good, But they're basically all evil, and they set no value by human life or welfare. Or I shouldn't say human, sentient being life or welfare. Mustn't discriminate against, monkeys. Against discrimination. Right? Yeah. So knowing that, then I would say there is no, and knowing the fact there was an accident, right? It wasn't deliberate, it was an accident. Right. Then I wouldn't necessarily blow the whistle on my friendly rival. I wouldn't really come forward and throw her or him or her under the bus.
Would you take the blame for them, maybe?
Would I take the blame?
Yeah.
I think probably I would try to find a way to make it out that no one was to blame if possible.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, it's kind of a moot point because I assume there will be CCTV there.
That's true. Yeah, it's supposed to be hypothetical to see whether you would throw your loved one under the bus. So what would you guys do?
Throw under the bus, then I can become the get promoted, get higher up in the ranks and do more evil shit lah. Yeah, I'm already in the Galactic Empire. I'll just roll with it already. Just double down. Right. I mean, if you get caught by the rebels, you're gonna get executed anyway. Then if you betray the empire, then you'll be hunted down as a deserter, then get executed as well. So it's just double down, just do more evil shit and just hope that everything works out.
Necessarily, in the Andor series, the New Republic has rehabilitation program one.
Oh, is it?
Wow.
Yeah, so ex-Empire people can be rehabilitated.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's that's after the events of the new
episode 6. After episode 6.
Yeah. So then if you're in the Elder Ren, right? That means that's the New Hope era.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So Heaven had the rehabilitation
center. That's true.
Yeah, so
the rebel may just kill you.
Yeah, I'll just get gunned down and then
at that point they would just kill everyone in the Empire.
Okay. Angie, how about you? Or Jerry?
You want to go first?
I think I would probably, if there's CCTV, I'll probably try to get rid of the footage. Figure out something so nobody is there. Yeah, so nobody is there. There's no trace of any me or my lover or and then once that happens, then I'll just I don't know. What? A planet was killed? People were killed? Sentient beings were killed? Oh, too bad.
So it's Eggblur live longer.
Yeah, Eggblur live longer. I am very pragmatic Singaporean that way.
Okay.
Oh, very good. You can think to sort of change the rules of the game. Yeah, remove the CCTV footage.
But because if no one else is there, then only I know, then I don't need to see anything, right? But if there's CCTV, then I'll just
plot twist: your lover betrays you.
Oh no!
Oh no!
That becomes a prisoner's dilemma.
That's why you don't believe in love. That's why you betray them first. Yeah.
What's your answer, Jerry?
Okay, my answer is similar to John's, but I won't betray my lover. I will come out and claim credit and not point finger. I made the decision. Yes, I'm the junior officer. Right? You guys are all seniors, right? So indecisive, you're bad for the Empire. I made the decision.
Oh my goodness, Jerry.
Yeah. You had the guts to take the
The scale of evil you all can see.
My goodness.
1 to 5.
It's fast track promotion.
This employee initiative, is terrific.
Very nice, very nice.
They hang a portrait Stormtrooper of the month. For taking initiative.
Very nice, very nice. Denmong, did you say already?
No. But I'm a romantic at heart, so yeah, I guess I would go along, but I wouldn't be so smart as you to remove the CCTV.
What would you do then?
I would just take the fall, take the blame. Yeah.
Wow, so
so romantic.
So romantic.
You just need to imagine your romantic partner, then it's easier that way.
Then she may save you just at the last minute when you're going to be executed.
Yes.
Then you jump into a life pod or something.
Yes.
Wow.
But
very nice
like
escape.
It's like the dramas.
Dan loves punishment anyway.
Oh yeah, maybe like you'll be like very happy when he's swinging or whatever.
My
I don't know,
goodness.
get like stabbed by a lightsaber or something.
Yes, Angie.
Choked by Darth Vader.
I don't know.
Choke me, daddy.
I like it. Oh, tighter. Oh, okay. All right.
So this episode has gone on for quite a while. Thank you, Leon, for spending so much time
It's
with
been
us.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Sir. Thank you.
Thanks to the whole
This
LongKang
was so
Kitties team for
fun.
having me. I really enjoyed it. It's been great.
So we'll come back again, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. If you still want to have me, lah.
Of course,
Of course. Of course.
All being polite,
We do have
No, we're not polite here. Nobody polite here.
Okay, we do have Leon's social media profile down in the description below. Okay, go and check those out. Follow his Instagram, his Facebook. There's the Workers' Party website as well. Leon, do you have anything that you would like to plug or like to share? Maybe something upcoming? Just anything you can think of.
Well, we have a lot of events upcoming, so I'd just like to ask everyone who has an interest in some of the things we discussed today to just follow our social media, be it the Workers' Party or be it individual members of the Workers' Party. So we do talk about our events there. And I think the last thing I'll say is, just always believe in a better future, for the country, for the next generation. Never give up on that. Improbable is never impossible. Always reach for the stars, because if you don't reach too far, you'll never know how far you can reach.
Oh my god, is that Star Wars reference?
I don't think so. Yeah. But it could be. Yeah. We need to have a new hope.
Awesome sauce.
Okay.
Okay.
So
do you want? Yeah.
Today we will end. And tomorrow we will work for the workers, and then later we will party.
Yeah. In fact, we are about to party with some alcohol, I think.
My
joke.
Discord Discord moderator challenged me to include that line, so I've included in. We lost the
my
bet.
gosh.
Okay.
Creative. Yeah. I like that. Is that line trademark? Can we steal it? Or?
No. Please, by all means, go and take it. Okay.
She will be so
everything.
happy.
Just take it. Natalie will be very elated. Okay, Natalie.
Yes.
Yeah,
Please
nice
take
lady.
it.
Okay. And so with that should be the end of today's episode. Thank you very much for listening in. Thank you, Leon, for spending so much time with us. And then please follow our social media, join our Discord, and we shall see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you so much for coming on.